Hi, everybody. This is your Winning Edge podcast brought to you by Sales Handicapper. I'm Skip Balch, your host. I have with me today Jon Tsourakis. Jon is an old hand at what's going on in today's marketplace and has been through quite a bit. Jon, I'm going to ask you if you would to just take a couple of minutes and tell everybody kind of where you are now and quickly how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, because quickly, I own a few businesses. One is the primary is Oyova. I have a business partner in that. How I got here, I mean, I worked in a family business for my dad. He let me go, got a job with another guy in the marketing space. And then from there, just, started some businesses, had some failures, had a lot of failures along the way, more failures than successes. But the mainstay of everything that I've been around is it's been technology, marketing, and sales. So no matter what, anything that I'm involved in, that's essentially what I typically bring to the table.
Where we are now, this show is about your winning edge, and it is about wanting to make sure that everybody that is listening hears something that will go, okay, this is what this person did or this company did that was different. That is what makes them win. And so I want to start off with one of the things that you told me the last time we were talking, which we kind of expounded upon, and that is, you said that in 2 years, 20% of the businesses that exist right now won't exist
In the agency space.
in the agency
Yeah,
space.
for sure. Yeah.
So how do you?
I hope I'm wrong.
Number one, well, why you think it could be higher than 20%?
I mean, it could be higher. Absolutely, man. Some people are predicting it to be higher, but I think ultimately what'll happen. So you want me to explain?
Yeah. I mean, well, and what are you going to do? What are you doing now? But what are you
Yeah.
going to do to make sure you're not in that 20%?
So first, let's back up. What happened, and what do a lot of these agencies do, right? Why did a lot of people get into this business? I don't know if it was too many people were hooked on Mad Men, or just people generally just gravitated toward marketing to begin with, right? So we'll speak specifically to mainly marketing agencies. So was it 10, 15 years ago, you had a big push for inbound, right? The methodology that HubSpot had, where they were really good at preaching this message to get everybody hooked on it, where it was essentially that, you don't have to do outbound anymore. You have to do it. You essentially just do this thing, which is called inbound. So it's SEO, social
Yeah.
media, everything is going to come to you,
Yeah.
which it's complete bullshit, right? Because the thing is, they built their enterprise and their company by doing outbound. I've never heard of a bigger hypocrisy in my life, but hey, God bless them, it worked, right? So you have all these agencies that got hooked on that, and they have these little niches, and that little niche is essentially, and it could be anything from somebody selling tractors to working in the hotel space or so on and so forth. But what they primarily did is they created content, right? So hey, we know how to write your blog content, or we know how to do this. So all of that business is drying up for the most part, and they're holding on to their expertise. They're trying to move over to a strategic side because there wasn't a whole lot there to begin with that ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity can't replace. So a big portion of those agencies, they're not going to be able to survive, or they've cut their staff and they're cutting their staff and not growing, and it's essentially going to eclipse them. So yeah, I'd say in the next few years, they're going to be out of business. What will happen, it's just going to be a turn where you're going to see all these other people that were laid off that are also going to see this pull toward that space. And they're more than likely going to reinvent essentially what they're doing with AI. They're probably going to go down market, which is sad. They're not going to make as much money as their predecessors were, the companies that they're replacing. So that's my prediction there. And then to answer your question, what are we doing? And I don't have a crystal ball, or I don't have a way to see around the corner, but I think ultimately it's deep expertise in what you're doing. And we have deep marketing expertise and deep development expertise. So it's making sure that we just keep getting better at those things. Because let's say that somebody's a great developer, right? And they've developed in a ton of different languages. You're going to have that other person that's going to believe that they can, fly by night, figure something out by using Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT to go ahead and put something together, whether it's going to be in JavaScript or React or any of these other languages. It's going to be a complete shit show. They're going to break it. They're going to mess up. And the beauty of that is they're going to call a company like ours to do it. And how do I know this? Because for the last year, man, this is exactly what's been happening. And the cool thing, though, is that people are able to prototype and get an application 95% of the way there. So they're coming to us, and it's a lot of discovery. So they're actually saving time. But that last 5% where they think they can get it, it's not there yet. Will it be in the future? Sure. But what do we have to do? We have to just stay ahead of whatever that is, making sure that we have the expertise there to be able to fix it. Because at the end of the
It's
day, oh, go ahead, please.
no, it's gonna be amazing though, to your point. You're gonna start getting paid a lot more for the final 10% than you ever did
Amen.
because
Yeah.
it's the final 10%, right? It's just like until it's done, right? There's done, done, and then there's done, 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 right? And the done, done, done is when the final 10% is done and the client, the ultimate end user, says, this is now ready to go. This has been a perfect, exceptional experience. And now we know that there's no more fixes. But, it's interesting. Been reading a lot, obviously, about the final mile. And I've been talking about the final mile for 30 years. And it's just like the final 10% of any construction project. Why does the final 10% take as long as the first 90%? And why is it a bigger pain in the ass? And it's that little bit, but it's the little bit that makes it happen. And you've heard the statistics. If the Postal Service, if they're only 1/10 of 1% off, that's a billion pieces of mail that get misdelivered every year.
Oof.
And I think you're finding that that's the case right now with technology. I built my website in Lovable,
Uh-huh.
and I'm doing a lot of things right now in Lovable. I couldn't do the back end in Lovable. I don't know how to do it. So I had to hire some guy to do the back end and the connection and the security, right? But I think that what's going to become important is now what the consumer doesn't see, but it's what's required in order for the consumer to see it consistently and to make sure that it works. So to your point, knock yourself out, build your MVP, a minimum, and build it in Lovable or Replit or anything. Go ahead, and if it's successful, that's the problem, right? Good news is if it's successful, then you can go ahead and do it until it scales. And then once it's got to hit scale, then you're going to have to make some changes or it's going to break.
I agree. I think, and I love analogies. I think some of the other points are you used to be able to buy your home from like the Sears catalog, and people actually had the skills to put it together. So
Hmm.
I think we're going to get into that. We're going to have these tools where somebody can put something together, but people are going to want something that's just a little bit more. Why? Because we just crave luxury. We self-esteem is driven by looking at everybody else and seeing how we can just raise that notch above, right? It's just human
Right,
competition.
right.
And that is what's going to keep pushing things forward. And I think if companies also have that competitive nature, they're going to be okay. The problem is if you just patch yourselves together and you are a marketing arm using all of this expertise, you're going to have a positioning problem. You have to change your position pretty quickly to be able to acquire new customers. And it's a completely different mindset to do that.
So how are you doing that? Give me an example of, well, actually, let's go back to one of the things you said, and that is you have a deep expertise in the technology, you have a deep expertise in design and so forth. I hear that term all the time. People have it on their websites and everything else. What does deep expertise mean? And how is your deep expertise different?
So to me, I mean, I'm old school. I look at just years of experience in something and work that's been done. Right. I remember there was an old ad
Okay.
guy. He told me, I was pitching him. He said, "Hey, look, man, it's not what you can do. It's what you've done, and you haven't done shit." And I was like, "Okay, all right." So it's essentially that old school portfolio. Like, hey, like what have you done? Right. So deep expertise in design. It's somebody that literally has their design methodology down. Now they're using the latest and greatest tools in most respects. I mean, for design, it's somebody that's really solid in Figma based on what we do from a design perspective, and they're just
Mhm.
creating an entire brand experience, right? So that's how, all right, that's how I would do design. As far as languages are concerned, it's somebody that's, has a framework background on a specific framework that they're using. And then, all right, how many years have you developed in that? And what have you developed? Show me how you're solving those problems. Not somebody that's going to, back in the day, would try to Google search it or now try to use essentially ChatGPT or Claude to try to figure out some of these things. Granted, take the shortcuts, right? But know the actual destination and what the journey looks like before you do that. And that's how we would do it. And of course, you could also take expertise based on niches and whatnot. And we have those. We have those sales stories and things that we've done. But I want to make sure, first and foremost, that I'm working with the best at whatever that thing is, whether it's going to be design, develop, or SEO. And if they're not, then I just really don't have the time or inclination. I don't like training. Now, granted, other people in my company do, but I want to make sure that we have somebody that's really solid they can learn under.
So What are your biggest challenges right now from a sales standpoint? Do you have a sales team that
We do,
you have?
yeah.
Okay, and how big is that sales team?
We have 3 other people on that sales team right now.
Okay, and how experienced are they at selling what you do?
I'd say one is, yeah, I mean, they got probably 15 years experience. I would say another, I know another, he's got about 11. And I'd say the third, she's probably got about 10 as well. Yeah.
Now, for your salespeople, the days are gone when the salesperson does everything all the way through until the end of close, right? What I've discovered in my years is that get me if I can qualify in the discovery call, right? The next conversation the client's going to have is with somebody else that's actually going to have to keep the promises that I made early on, right? And so it's a team sale. There's no
Totally agree.
anymore one guy doing it. There's a team sale, and my number one obligation is to make sure that I tell the best story I possibly can about our capabilities. But it's also to make sure that I'm setting up whoever it is, whoever else I'm bringing into the sales conversation, I'm setting them up to succeed. Okay. So when you're selling right now, then and you've got all of these people that you've got to be able to put in front of the client in order to be able to just make the sale, forget actually delivering. What are the biggest challenges that you're experiencing right now in the sales process?
I'd say actually getting to the decision maker would probably be the biggest because now there's just we typically work either at the founder CEO level or like C-suite, right, one under, um, and when there's a down market, there's cattle calls, right? So we're going up against 10, 15 others. I used to have a rule if it was any more than 6, I would just say, hey, take our head out of the ring. But now with the economy the way it is, it's like, all right, that number is edged up quite a bit. So we
Hmm.
need to be more competitive to do that. But I agree, it's a team selling approach. So in that, the other people that are on the team that are responsible for selling, they're also account managers. Right. So in that they have their book of business, which is great because they can actually pull from those stories in a day in, day out
Yep.
type of
Yep.
scenario. So
Yep.
if we tee up the call properly, we have them on there. Myself, I'm in a lot of these meetings as well. That's a great way to not only introduce them to the team, hey, this is somebody you're going to be working with directly. So your POC is right
Big.
here.
Yep. Be big.
And
Yep.
then the other piece is that they're going to be able to show you examples of work. So everybody comes to a situation when they're buying something because they are unique, but it doesn't mean their problem is unique. So you have to make them feel special, but also make them feel comfortable in knowing that you've seen this before and you're going to be able to handle it. So you're going to meet that expectation. And as long as you do
Hmm.
that, people tend to stay with you forever.
Yeah. Well, by definition, originality doesn't scale. So you could have 20 companies in the exact same industry, but each one of them is going to have their own issue. So to your point, the issues are very similar, right? Because your company operates in a particular market environment. So here are the things that you've got to be able to do, right? But your situation, what you perceive to be important or what you're lacking relative to an ability to do something, right? That's going to be very different, right? And so you have to be able to listen to learn, not listen to respond. Even though you may know the answer, you may not know the answer to their particular situation, right? And so when you're doing that, then and you're talking to them and they're getting excited about your particular solution and they're buying into the story, okay? But then you're still going to lose some of them. So why are you losing today?
Oh man, price. We're not the cheapest solution. I'd say that's a big reason that we lose. And we have a lot of our labor is US labor. So when somebody's overseas, like, okay, you have to build a very compelling story to win if you have an all US team. So it's a very difficult, it sucks to lose to someone that you have a very correctable competitive advantage that you just stick to by,
Hmm.
essentially company values, right? So I'd say price is definitely a big reason. Another one that we've corrected is, and anybody listening, if you can see them in person, get on a
Mm.
plane, get in a car, do whatever you're going to do, man. I lost a deal. We had this thing in the bag, Skip. Like, there's no reason we could have lost. And the other company was not as qualified. They weren't in business as long. Like, they were the loser and we were the winner, but we lost because they got on a plane and they made them feel special. And the project went completely sideways. Like, yeah, it was a disaster. But I learned then, I was like, okay, like whatever you do, if you can actually press the flesh, that's important. You need to show somebody how special they are. So that's another reason that we would lose. I would say if we're not losing against price today, then they just have a deeper and wider portfolio than we do, and that they've shown a more compelling solution than we have. And if that
Best story
happens,
wins.
yeah,
Best story
absolutely,
wins, and they have
every
a
time,
better story. You know,
absolutely.
it's interesting. When I built the sales handicapper, the sales handicapping model that I built, I don't know, 20 some odd years ago for a startup, I had 5 salespeople and they were traveling all over the US. This is a long time ago when travel was still expensive, right? And they would go and they would say, "Hey, I need to go see this bank in Birmingham, Alabama, and this is what it is that we need to do in order to be able to win, and I got to go." And then we would lose. And so what I determined was I built Sales Handicapper to basically to determine what's winnable and what's not based upon where we're already winning, which I find so funny. So many companies today are saying, well, this is where we should win because this is our ICP and this is our value proposition, which basically means they're a core competency company, right? Sergio Zyman, the SVP of marketing for Coca-Cola, who did the Mean Joe Green ad, iconic ad, right? He pulled the ad after 6 weeks because it wasn't moving anything off the shelf. But he wrote a book called Renovate Before You Innovate. And in that book, he said there are 2 kinds of companies, those that are core essence and those that are core competency driven. Core competency says, here's what we know how to do. Now let's go find the market that can buy it. Core essence says, here's the market that we want to play in. Let's build products and services that will satisfy that market. Okay. And I think that is so huge, right? Because I think that when you look at yourself as a company, what are we? Either one of them is fine, but don't be a core competence company and don't continue to lose because you're trying to sell outside of your competency because that's how you positioned yourself, right? And then to your point, you can be a core essence company, but at some point you got to have proof.
Mhm.
You got to have proof that you've been actually able to deliver, right? When you get to that situation where you ultimately have to, and I believe that if you're losing on price, then you already lost before, you just didn't know it yet. Okay. Because the sales process is literally a lot of little sales. And it's a lot of little sales that you have to gain confirmation on along the way. And what's interesting is that if something changes, the way to the beginning again and say, what changed? What was the condition that changed, right? Have you had so you had a deal, which I love. I didn't go, right? So the question that I used to ask my salespeople was, here's what I'm going to ask you. If your physical presence is critical to the successful outcome of the meeting, then go. Or if if they have a long tail. So do you get a lot of repeat business from your clients? So if you do, and there's a long tail there, then all you got to do, it's amazing. Even with Zoom and so forth, and I've been on all of them since the very beginning. If you're there one time, you can literally do business with them by phone after that because they've seen you, they feel you, they know what you look like, they've got a face in their head when you're talking, right? But to not go that first time can be killer. And in today's market, where everything is AI, right? Even Zoom calls are AI. It's amazing. I was on one the other day, and it was when I discovered that it was AI, it disgusted me, and
Oh, man.
it did. It was like, are you
You got tricked.
shitting me? You cannot even be real with me on a Zoom call, right? No wonder nobody trusts anything anymore, right? So when you win, okay, what is your winning edge? What is that thing that you guys do that nobody else does?
I went through it's a very, I don't want to mention the guy's name because it ultimately was a failure, but it was a very long drawn out process based on like, differentiation and positioning and all that type of stuff. Um, we're really good at what we do. I put us up almost against anybody in a lot of categories, but I have to be honest, we're a commodity. You could buy essentially this input somewhere else. So I'd say our winning edge is the tightness in what we do from the beginning of the sales process all the way through the execution, where you're not going to feel any pain. It's white glove. You're going to love this process. So you can buy this somewhere else. You're going to have to do more. You might lose sleep. You might be a little bit worried, but you're going to see from the moment you engage all the way through our entire process that you are in a sense of calmness, peace, and less worry. And at no point are we ever going to bullshit you. We're going to give you the straight answer. So
So
that's
then,
essentially how we win. So it's very difficult to really see that without references. So speaking of stories,
mhm.
we give references, and these are references that we love these people, we've taken care of them, and those stories sell. So we just had a meeting on Friday. I'm very superstitious. I hope we get it, and I love to win. She mentioned the person's name, and she said, "Hey, he spoke very highly of you," and that goes a long way because I know who this person is, and very grateful that that person took the time to do that. So I don't know if I have a good answer for your winning edge, but I'd say it's the tightness of our process and delivery, because I know we're a commodity at the end of the day, regardless of the outputs. And I'd say it's the people that are willing to speak up for us.
How many people in the company total?
But right now, we're just under 30. Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of times we mentioned the concept of being grateful. Okay. How do you imbue that that attribute, that characteristic into your company? And do you first just hire people that are by nature grateful, that are by nature have great attitudes? But how does that come across in your day-to-day leadership of these companies?
There's a sense that you get with people when you spend time with them where you just pick up these little micro expressions and nuances, and you can hear the stories that they tell, and you can understand what they're choosing in life. Are they choosing to be negative? Are they the victim? Are they
Mhm.
accountable? And I think based on that pattern of behavior, you can get a really good idea of somebody that's grateful, because if you are the victim, if you're not holding accountability, and you're always in a negative position, there's no gratitude there. So I would say based on the way that somebody carries themselves, you can really see that. Unless they're a total psychopath and they slip through the cracks. I mean, unfortunately, we're going to bump into some of those people, and they're going to be able
Right.
to exhibit these things that don't exist. I'd say it's that. And I think also giving a lot of credit and just telling people, like, where we had a lead that came in today where I didn't realize that we would even show up for that type of search. So I went into the marketing channel and just, hey guys, really good job here. And so I think also showing that, hey, you're grateful to them and giving them the credit based on the work that they've done is a good example of that as well.
So where do you get most of your leads then?
It's a mix, man. If I had the magic wand to do that, I wish we had this really gnarly sales machine. Sometimes it's going to be cold outbound, and that's going to be our number one. Sometimes it's going to be from directories. Sometimes it's going to be from our own inbound, whether it's going to be SEO and social. So it's a complete mix. And referrals, I don't want to discount that by any stretch either.
So business is good, business is tight, business is cautious.
Business is what's the best way to put this? We're more profitable than we were, but we're not at the largest we've ever been. So
Okay.
it's just a function of, I think, where the economy's at. And granted, during COVID and there was a hangover based on staffing, right? So we did our best. We lost some people based on some other people poaching ours. And then we also pulled on some people that we didn't need. But right now, I think we have the best running ship that we've ever had with partners, employees, everybody else that's involved. So that I'm very excited for. And I'm optimistic for 2026.
You are. Were you optimistic for 2025?
I was not.
No.
And I'm,
Yeah,
I'm almost like an eternal optimist. I was like, man, this is not looking good. So yeah, I'd
yeah,
say I'm
it's
more
funny.
optimistic.
In the beginning of 2025, it was thrive in 2025, and by about June, it became survive 2025. You know,
Anytime they try
was
to put some kind of like slogan to the
yeah,
year, so like
yeah,
2020, we're seeing so clear. And then we get hit with a, global pandemic. It's like, guys, just stay away from whatever try to cuteness you're gonna add to, this year.
right. So you're right in the thick of it, right? You're you're in the trenches. You're selling, along with your team. It's a team sale. What guidance, like real hard, like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that kind of guidance would you give to somebody else in your position that's in a highly competitive? And I love the fact that you admitted your commodity. most businesses today are. So what's the differentiator? It comes down to your ability to tell stories. It's your ability to connect. I believe that the two primary elements are trust and vulnerability. Trust is, it's so funny. We could be traveling 70 miles an hour on a 2-lane road in the pitch dark, and we completely trust that the other person coming the other way isn't going to veer into our lane, right? But if you look at and kill us, trust to me is never having to question the motive or the competence of the other person. Not one or the other, but it's both. I don't trust, I trust your competence and I trust your motives, right? And then vulnerability, I think, is the willingness to go in and have a conversation, and whatever that conversation is, it was my faith taught me that vulnerability is what's the worst that can happen? Let's just be vulnerable to the truth and go on in there, right? And see what happens, right? And then it's all about, your vulnerability. I think you mentioned it, is due to the fact that it's competence and humility. It's I've done this before. We've been there, done that, right? Got the t-shirt. And then you go in and you just go in with humility, knowing that you don't have to go in guns blazing, that if you just do it right, then it'll come back to you. So you're doing it, been doing it for a while. What advice do you have anybody coming in now? It's in your position.
Hire if somebody's going to be in sales, one of the things that you can't teach is curiosity.
Mhm.
And the more curious somebody is, again, then there's a funny thing about curiosity, right? I have a boundless curiosity. Some people are going to call that ADD or something, but I'm going to go down these rabbit holes and stuff. But I've tried. You can't teach for that. Somebody either has that or they don't. So that's something that you have to look for in the people. And I don't care how good somebody is at essentially their organizational skills or anything else. If you put a curious person with somebody, and especially a service-based industry where you sell custom things and it is as a commodity, you're going to come out way further ahead, in my opinion, because that person's going to be able to not only make that person feel comfortable, because a curious person generally wants to know about the other person. They want to hear their stories. They want to know about, all right, well, how'd you do that? What does this mean? So you're just really digging in there. And when you have that, it builds not only such a bond, you create so much work for yourself on the positive end. It's like, oh, this is all this stuff that we get to do now. And it comes from a genuine place rather than somebody being programmatic and trying to get there. Not that they're, not going to be as good some of the time, but in the long haul, they're going to lose because the other person is just doing what they do and they're just having a conversation and they're just exploring
I
and they're learning.
totally agree. I think curiosity is the fuel of AI. In the absence of being curious, AI's got nothing to do for you,
That's a
right?
great point.
And what's interesting is that I think we're killing curiosity in our grade schools, because these kids are growing up with basically, I have the answer right on my phone.
Mm,
I don't have to go search for it. I don't have to be curious about it. I don't have, and oh, by the way, that's assuming that I'm prepared, which they are, to believe exactly what's coming out of my phone or my computer when I shouldn't. Curiosity is basically questioning,
mhm.
right? And so it is the fuel. To your point, I totally agree, and I also think you have to figure out a way to determine what that person's work ethic is. You can't teach somebody work ethic, right? They either have it or they don't, and it's in their DNA. By the time you get to them, it's already pretty much set. And so show me somebody that's really smart, that has a lousy work ethic, and I'll take somebody that's not quite as smart that'll work their ass off
Amen. All day. You can't
because
teach
they can
hungry.
learn. You can't teach hungry. That's right. You can't teach hungry. Then, if you're going to be selling today, right? How does a conversation for you start? How do you start a conversation, and what drives that?
I think it's learning a little bit about them, right? So I'm also a direct person. So you learn a little bit about them and then just say, okay, like, what is it that we want to do here today? What is it that we want to accomplish? Why did you contact us? So I think starting there, and somebody that's been on any kind of sales calls with me, if there's somebody else that's on there is like, hey, do you want to go ahead and set the table and explain essentially what we're going to do here today? And then, yeah, they'll typically come in saying, "Hey, I need this," or "I filled out this form on your website," if it's the first initial call. Or if my assistant had that call, she briefs me on that, and I say, "Hey, these are the things that I understand that it is that you need." and we just literally just piece it off and take it from there. I've seen I had a mentor that was very Sandler trained, and he would explain the exact process, and this is what you're going to do in it, and so on and so forth, and it was very structured and whatnot. I think if you can take somebody there without them seeing the puppeteers in the puppet show, it's a more elegant experience. And that's what I strive for. I want a very engaging show presentation where the person is going to not see any of the lines, and they're just going to leave and say like, okay, like that person answered every one of my questions. He asked a whole hell of a lot of questions, and I feel that they have everything that they need to get me to this next step. Because you're absolutely right. There's all these micro closes that are happening, right?
Hmm.
And I kind of using a sports analogy, I always want us to have control of the ball, right? We're never just going to send you a proposal, right? It's okay,
Right.
when are we going to meet next so we can go over that with you? And then just continually moving it all the way along. We also make sure that they're qualified to get the proposal, right? So to me, it's very discouraging when we lose on price, but we discussed price ahead of time. Hey, for that, it's going to be $20,000. How does that land on you? Well, that sounds great. And then you do a postmortem and it's like, well, somebody else did it for 10. It's like, well, 20 sounded okay. Like what is, well, $10,000 is $10,000 for that. It's like, okay, all right, I get it. But yeah,
Everybody's your friend till the rent comes due, right?
well said. Yeah.
Right, and so it's which is why it's interesting in qualification, and I believe that qualification is not a stage. Qualification is not a stage in the sales process. Qualification is the sales process because you're
Uh,
always qualifying. With each thing that you're going through, there's always qualification, right? And so for me, what I've found over the years is I just now had whittle it down to one question because the one thing that I really want to find out after the first phone call, I want to be able to say I know is that, if you look at BANT, right? Budget, authority, need, and timing, right? To me, you're not going to get all of that, not truthfully anyway, in one call. If you do, then that should be a red flag. But what I really want to find out is urgency. And so now the question that I ask is, what is it that makes this call important today? Today. And what's interesting is that a lot of people you can ask, what makes this call important or why did you call or whatever, and you'll get a lot of their angst and a lot of their challenges. But when you put the issue of today or now on there, it changes. It changes everything, changes the answer.
that's a huge modifier, right?
And so
Yeah.
and so now and then if they never get there, then you go back. You have something to go back to. Well, we talked about what was important about this call today. So I didn't hear anything that there was any real urgency because if I can get urgency, if I can get need and urgency out of the first call, then I can work with that, right? But because most of the time I'm not going to be, maybe you might be talking to authority, but most of the time you're talking to the person that has, the responsibility, but not the authority, right? And you're definitely not talking to the deal killer, which is the guy that has all the authority, but no, there's none of the responsibility, but she's high enough up, right? In the thing. And that's who you never get to talk to. You talk about a champion. Sometimes that you recognize, you forget that your champion is not your authority, right? And so you got to figure that out. So to me, qualification is something that you do all the way throughout, through solution validation, through proposals. So when you ask the question, they say 20, you say 20 grand, they go, that sounds good, right? Well, unfortunately, you got to qualify that. Why does that sound good? Is that going
Mhm.
to sound good when you get another answer of 10,000? Because somebody's going to do it for 10,000. Right? I'm with you. I like to talk cost up front. I don't
Mhm.
like to tease the animals at the zoo. If I'm going to be out of bounds, then I want to find out now. I qualify to disqualify, right? So it's interesting that when you're in that process, the hardest thing to do when you think you're hearing what you want to hear is to listen to learn and not listen to respond. I think most people listen to respond, which means that they didn't really hear the answer because the answer came in the third explanation. You're already answering the first one
Mhm.
in your head, right? Because that voice is going off in your head. You didn't hear the third one, which is really the thing that's going to wind up biting you in the butt, right at the end, right? Kind of a situation. So, what do you what do you think is the single biggest reason companies don't buy. And when you say it's price, I could say that's price or value. The value sale wasn't made, so it's easy to say that it's price. What is the number one reason?
If I had to say, other than, the value side for price, I would say we lose. Man, we lose to a lot of insiders, and that's something
Hmm.
I always try to sniff out, right? It's they already have someone selected. And I try to get that. The team, all of us, somebody's coming to us not being genuine. So we're not
Hmm.
going to get that. They've already have this person selected. So I'd say that's probably the biggest reason we lose. And
Yeah,
that's
the
not.
incumbent. That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, like you've already made your choice. Like, but you need to bring three. And I go back to we worked with this company and the proposal was like 200 grand and we won. And she said, but hey, she's like, I can't have it for 200 grand. So I need you to put together 8 proposals for 25,000 for the same project. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, break it up into milestones. And I was like, well, why? She said, because all I can approve is $25,000.
I can sign off on 25.
So there's in their process, okay, they have
Yeah.
this. There's probably six, so who knows how many other competitors that had to submit their proposals. They lost. They were going to choose us. And it's like, okay, this is the nature of competition. We're going to win. And this
Hmm.
is the part of that process. So yeah, losing to the insiders is brutal, but
That's an
big part of
interesting,
it.
the insider, the incumbent is always tough. Even when you're better than the incumbent, right? If they have a process that they've gotten used to with the incumbent, then even if you're better and everything else, change is hard.
Man, we had this, it was a huge consulting firm and we went above and beyond. There's no way we should have lost this, Skip. I mean, everything was amazing. But the influencer, some people call it the champion, she had somebody else picked out and she slipped up in one of the meetings.
Hmm.
And, we probably could have used that but she would have been working with us and that would have destroyed the relationship anyway. So there was no point. But
Right.
it was revealing. We followed up after. That's who won. We spoke with some of the others at the company. It was a pretty big deal. And yeah, it was already a done deal. And I wish you would have just told us ahead of time. I mean, I'll throw together some crappy little proposal and send it over to you to just check a box.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
I used to say that when we had prospects in Alaska, company I was with in Denver, and I would just say, look, I'm not going to be column fodder for you. Tell you what, let's not do it and say we did. Let me send you a proposal. You can say you got your proposal, you got your three, okay, and we'll just do it. Here's what's interesting. What I found over the years is that prospects don't like you to quit them. And I probably 50% of the deals that I quit, the client has now come back and sold me on why we should take their business. You ever had
Mm.
that happen?
Yeah, where we've told people like, yeah, hey, this isn't going to work, and they get deeply offended. They're like, whoa, whoa, wait, wait a second, I break up with you, like this
Yeah,
doesn't make
that's
sense.
right. Yeah. You don't quit me, I quit you. Yeah. But what's interesting is incredibly powerful, isn't it? Because then they're now telling you things that they never told you in the beginning as to why it is that you're better, why it is that they should go with you, and why you should stay involved. And I even
Oh,
had one. What?
I have an example. Yeah, so this is something that we do. It's just like, hey, we're going to go ahead and take our hat out of the ring, and we'll go ahead and help you make the selection for who you want to hire. And when
Hmm.
you're talking to someone, you will see their body language. Everything changes. They're like, oh. And then now
Yeah.
you have a genuine conversation with them. And it's not a trick. And sometimes, hey, they're going to choose you. But I look, all right, hey, down the road, then you're going to actually be able to help them with this solution. And then you're going to get the business later. So,
Well, there's a
yeah.
lot of power in knowing what your walkaway is. I
Mhm.
actually had a guy get really flush. I mean, I could see it on Zoom when I said, "Look, I'm just thinking this is probably not going to be a fit, so we're going to go ahead and bow out." And there was just silence, but he didn't get angry. He got flustered, and he said, "So yeah, I don't, huh?" He couldn't. Nobody had ever quit him before,
Yeah.
right? And he's like, as it turns out, on that one we actually declined because if there's a fit, and there's an old saying, a man cannot consistently act in a manner which is inconsistent with his nature.
Mm.
And so during the sales process, I got to see glimpses of this person and thinking, well, Am I going to put my people in this guy's path and have him treat people blah 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 and so on and so forth? So you don't burn them up, right? You want to leave them standing. But I just finally just said, listen, I wish you well, and that was it. And
Reminds
as
me of
it
Seth
turned out,
Godin.
he wound up going through 2 other of our competitors in the next 6 months, and then I don't know what he did after that, but they called back. One of them called me and said, "I understand you guys were like in the lead, and you guys decided not to play." And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Why?" And I told him, and he goes, "Yeah, that's exactly what happened to us." Okay, so that one I got lucky. That one I got lucky.
It reminds me of the saying. It reminds me of a couple of things. One is the saying that we say, like, we don't want to make this person rich.
We don't want to what?
We don't want to make this person rich. Like
Yeah,
they don't deserve it, right? Like
right.
this isn't going to be good. They're gonna punish
Yeah,
you.
right.
And then the other is where you know somebody's a bad fit, and you say like, "Hey, let me make your recommendation," and you send them right to your competitor.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
That's what that
yeah,
reminded me of.
yeah, yeah. And even but that's even a flip side of that is when you know you're a commodity, then you have to reposition your competitor, not position you. That's a
Mm,
different story for a different day. Where actually I won 6 deals in a row by doing nothing more than that. I repositioned my competitor, and I was selling desktop database software, and I repositioned my competitor as basically being a McGuffey reader, right? Versus our solution, which was if you're really serious about winning.
yeah.
And as they well, we want to be really serious about winning. Okay. And they had a really good system, and it was prettier than ours and everything else, but it was limited. And so you just had to ask them, who do you want to be? And wound up winning 6 deals. It was funny. It was a good time.
Oh, that's killer.
What's your question? Not for me, but what's your question to the audience that is kind of to leave them with, hey, you need to really ask yourself X as you go about 2026.
As it relates to sales, are you truly prepared to actually purchase and use the time effectively of the people that you're actually buying from?
Hmm, that's a good question. Qualify that they're going to give value.
Qualify that they're going to give value, but actually truly knowing what you want. I mean, they have all the tools at their disposal to actually make sure that it's going to be a very effective process. Just being very clear and tight, saying, this is what I need. And I think too many people don't take the time to do that. And it costs their companies way more money than it should. For example, if somebody says, hey, we need this done in 2.5 months. It's going to be a 6-month project. Companies can get it done in 2.5 months, right? The vendors or partners, however we want to phrase them. But the company's internal decision process is so skewed, is so backward, and they're so unclear of what they truly want that it will take them a year to approve the company they're going to hire. And they had a component in there because somebody's
Hmm,
ego said this needed to be done in 2.5 months, right? Like those are the types of things. It's like you're not really clear on how you purchase, how you buy, what you really need, and it costs companies so much money. Myself and my company, we're still going to make money. It's fine, but when you just see it from a organizational and a business standpoint, you want to help them, and there's nothing that you can do to help them. It's just something they hopefully learn on their own, but not sure they ever will.
John, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. This has been a great conversation. I
Likewise, Skip, this has
appreciate
been a
your
pleasure,
time.
man.
I appreciate your insights, especially in your candor about what's working, what you're concerned about going forward.
Cool, man. My pleasure. Appreciate you having me, man.